I want to know what's happening today in the world of marketing when it comes to AI.
The thing that's causing a lot of fear or backlash or just controversy is specifically AI tools that either automate or ideate for you. But there's a really interesting conversation happening right now about what can and should be commoditized and what just can't be. Right. Going back to my major POV on just how to get to the human problem, why do you feel like you're only valuable if you can do that thing a machine can automate? Let's brainstorm. How can you be valuable in other ways?
You've been at one company from the beginning and you've transitioned in so many different roles. How are you navigating all that and how are you still keeping that energy and not burn out like me?
My current CEO asked me a really important question. Do you envision yourself as the absolute best at the thing you're currently doing? Or do you envision yourself being a really broad generalist who's really good at a lot of things? Right. The cost is never really truly knowing what rest or settling in your own self is like, because you're always just able to adapt. And I'm not necessarily always figuring out who I am in the room. Almost always. I would actually wager 100% of the time, there's some kind of personal reason why someone is having that problem and helping them with that, even though that feels like it's venturing outside of work. Right. That's what actually allows them to grow.
Shelby, thank you so much for being here today. And I have thought about different ways to start this conversation, but I want to touch on your core message, which you shared with me. You said humans can be, can't say this word, but you said humans can be compartmentalized so that we only rent a portion of them while they're clocked in. I want to start there. What do you mean by that? Because I know how complex people can be.
Yeah.
So how did you come about this, especially when you hire, people for your company?
Yeah, I think it's really common for leaders to focus on the skills that are part of the job that they hired the person for, and then get really frustrated if like something doesn't work or there's a problem. Like anytime an obstacle or an issue arises, and it's really easy to just deal with that problem, issue, or even just growth area by only focusing on like the work itself. And almost always, I would actually wager 100% of the time, there's some kind of personal reason why someone is having that problem, or there is that blocker, there's that obstacle in front of them, and helping them with that, even though that feels like it's venturing outside of work and business, like that's what actually allows them to grow. And I think early on, I've really been in a leadership position since I started working. It just was kind of thrust on me. And I early on did not do that. I really tried to just deal with the problem, the surface level, the business problem. And I would see people, let's take an example, like I'm seeing someone really not iterate and bring me a lot of ideas and bring me new thinking. The way I would compartmentalize that, and the way I feel like most leaders compartmentalize that, is just say, hey, you need to get better at iteration, and you need to carve out time in your schedule, and you need to, here are the 6 steps that you need to take. And they're very logical. But in reality, I have learned like the real question is, why don't you feel like you have permission to explore? What about that is scary to you? Do you not feel like your ideas are good enough? Like all of those are very human problems. And they do express themselves in a business format and in a job in a sense that they feel very obvious or tactical. But really to actually improve on them, you have to really work with that person to understand who they are as a human. So there's this empathy factor, but there's also like a curiosity, and that does require a lot of vulnerability on behalf of the person you're talking with. But I think when you model that, it's a lot easier for that person to feel like they can meet you there.
Oh, I like that. And I call myself the chief empathy officer now after years in therapy. But I do love what you said here, just to close out, that core message. You said, so it's imperative we understand what drives them, scares them, make them feel at ease, and ultimately helps them grow. When I read that, I'm just like, again, people are very complex. how do you, go about, like basically like closing the trust gap? Because trust has to be established for all this to happen. And I know sometimes
So
in the workplace, there's this entire idea is like, this is my job. I have to be really good at it because that's what I'm paid to do. And so people don't know how to be vulnerable with one another. But when I read this, it's like you figured out some way how to get deeper with people that you work with. So how do you close that trust gap?
It's a great question. I do think curiosity is a huge part of it. I think it's very easy for people to jump to conclusions and label employees or their direct reports as either good or bad,
Right.
or apathetic or overachieving. It's like this very binary labeling. So having some curiosity off the bat of just simply giving them the benefit of the doubt that what you're seeing as a surface level issue is so much more complex than that, and allowing for it to be. So there's a little bit on your behalf as a leader where you need to be able to step back and say, okay, I'm frustrated about this situation, but like what could be going on that is not necessarily even bad. It's just a blocker. Like I like thinking about them more neutrally, less so good and bad, and more just what's in the way? How can we move that? And then outside of that, I think a lot of grace. There's a fine line between grace and coddling. I think that a lot of leaders can, move into just like, whatever is going on, it's fine. Some things are just not fine, but I still have grace that it's happening. Let's work through it together. Like this isn't going well, or this is a problem, or this is just straight up holding you back from growth. I know that that's hard to hear. I understand that you want better for yourself. I want better for you. I'm going to have grace in the moment in order for us to even just figure out a solution. Like if you just come out the gates hot, nobody's willing to listen to that. That's not helpful. It's not motivating. So I think curiosity, grace, those two really go hand in hand.
No, yeah, it's so interesting because I do have a habit of having the good and the bad, and it's so funny. Every guest that I've had here, I feel like I'm being called out. So thank you for that. Shelby too. But then I do love the permission piece because again, a lot of, especially on like leadership level, I think a lot of leaders don't give themselves the permission. Just in general, and if you don't give yourself the permission to do so, then why should you be even try to be curious in the first place? You're not even letting yourself be. And another thing that I want to talk about, and this is going to be a little bit of pivot because I know your background is in marketing, and this is a personal thing. I worked in marketing. I hated it, every level of marketing, and I happen to be one of those leaders in marketing who was struggling at every level. I was really good at paid search. That's what I wanted to do. But then I was find myself getting promoted to do other things. and I know you kind of started similar as like someone who was always being a leader. You've been at one company from the beginning, and you've transitioned in so many different roles. And I know now you're doing sales as well. How are you navigating all that, and how are you still keeping that energy to do all those different roles and not burn out like me and go to therapy, and now I'm doing a podcast.
And it's successful, and it's great, and it's where you're supposed to be.
I'm doing my best.
I think my current CEO asked me a really important question, even maybe just a year in to our current company. And that was, do you envision yourself as the absolute best at the thing you're currently doing? Or do you envision yourself being a really broad generalist who's really good at a lot of things? And that seems like a really simple question. I mean, I honestly think most people should be asking that of themselves. But I had really only been thinking single track mind at that point in time. And it really helped me realize I did not necessarily see myself being the designer and being only known for that thing. And it helped at every stage me realize this is part of my expanding into a generalist role. So I'm not going off course. This is the course to go in weird directions. Like that is the plan. And so I think having that rooted in my mind early helped, because otherwise I do think I would have dealt with maybe a little bit of maybe even like a personal identity crisis of like, is this right? Is it wrong? But instead I was able to just simply say, from the beginning, I have wanted to be a generalist who could do a lot of different things,
Right.
who's involved across the spectrum. So that means no matter what I choose, technically I'm on the right path. It kind of is like a little bit of a cop-out. And the other thing is, I do think it's a personality trait in some ways that I want to build things. And I get extremely restless if there is not a blank canvas in front of me. If there is a well-oiled machine that I'm meant to just simply keep maintenance of, I'm going to get really restless. I'm going to want to move. I'm going to want to change. And so naturally being in a position where I'm forced into the next blank canvas, I think it works with my personality and what I'm motivated by. And what's funny is I see that is a unique trait and not something that like even everyone on my team wants. If I forced that on every single person on my team, they would be so stressed out and overwhelmed, and they would feel like anchorless. Whereas I feel like free and I would feel anchored down if I stayed in one spot. So I do think it's a little bit of like a personal preference. But knowing that about yourself is so incredibly important. And I think my entire life, I've just been set up for the need to adapt no matter the situation. So it feels natural to me to just be thrust into a new situation and figure it out each time.
Interesting. Now that you mentioned that, I want you to give me like a synopsis of who is Shelby? How did you find yourself in this position? And if you're comfortable, I want to know about your childhood. Like, who is Shelby?
Yeah, I have this vision of myself as this little multifaceted, I don't know if it's like a little gym or something with all these different
like a hexagon
facades. Yes. Where it's like every different side of me has come from like a different part of my life. Very much have had to be a chameleon. Growing up, I started flying out every summer to live with my grandparents on the East Coast for the entire summer. So I would be here in the Midwest all school year long, and then completely uprooted from friends and nearby, and by myself was on a plane and spending the summer where there weren't other kids. I had one friend that I developed over like 18 years of being there. Oh, wow. I really was kind of put on this weird little island, and the difference in those two worlds, I think, really created both the need to be able to adapt and be a different person given the different circumstance, but also an appreciation for that. Like I, in the Midwest, was surrounded by friends and other family, and it was a very rich and full community where I could kind of maybe even sit back and relax and be on the sidelines. But living with my grandparents, they were extremely wealthy, had extremely high standards. I was in etiquette. I was being taught all kinds of independent activities from a very young age, and expected to be in line and adapt and be a very like good ambassador of the family to all of these high level people. And that was such a difference. And so I think from early on in my life, I had the expectation that like, doesn't matter what room I'm in, I need to read the room. I need to figure out who's motivated by what around here. I think, it's probably also a trauma response. But the hypervigilance, it works well in different situations. But because I'm living in these two totally different worlds, and especially in the summers, I really didn't have supervision. And then when I did, it was heavy. It was like very intense micromanaging. So when I was alone, it was just fostering this imagination. They would like drop me off on the beach, things that you would never do in 2026. I would get dropped off at the beach with a lunchbox, and I would be there the entire day while they were at work. And, just made my own little imaginative world, played in the ocean by myself. We're talking like 8 years old, right? Wow. It's crazy.
The things that our grandparents or parents did back then. You think about it today, you're like, wow. Yeah,
I would never do this with my son. But also, though, I can have so much appreciation for the fact that I will never be bored. I will never be bored in my life. I always can find something that is fulfilling or exciting, or some new thing I want to think about or explore or do, because I've had to work that muscle from day one. I had no one giving me something to do. I had no one constructing my schedule.
Right.
And so I think that has all it's a really easy tie-in to who I am today and how I operate today.
Right.
Is the ability to be a chameleon, no matter the room, to honestly pull up a seat at the table if there isn't one already, because I really had to advocate for myself in that way. There was an expectation, I think, in that wealthier community. I think that there's that elite circle expects a certain level of excellence that was very stressful, I think, as a kid, but now I can rise to that occasion a lot easier.
Right.
And then the creativity factor, just not growing up attached to a cell phone, not growing up in front of a screen or indoors with a scheduled activity. Like, I don't need anything. I could sit in a room and come up with 50 ideas. And that's such a benefit in my role now that really was cultivated as a kid.
Yeah. Well, whenever I get, I get a lot of invite, but next time I get an invite to some wealthy person's house, I'm like, hey, Shelby, hey, I need you with me.
You're like, here's how to cut the steak.
I don't know how to behave. Okay. I'm there just roasting people. It's just like a habit of mine. I just be roasting. I don't know why, but
I'm not sure it's maybe
it's like a trauma response as well.
asset.
But no, it's funny because sometimes people actually appreciate that. They're like,
Yeah,
I don't know what they do,
is.
but they're laughing really hard. It's usually their wives laughing so hard. I'm gonna say, I think they like me, and then they ghost me. I'm gonna say, okay, they don't like me. So.
I think that there is such beauty in having experienced both the way people build up a facade when they want to be appearing as, the elite, the wealthy, whatever, but to have also been on the other side of that, to be in a very low to middle class family where there was no facade and it was just comfortable and candid.
Right.
And I think that that's why it's appreciated and it feels like novel to people in those like very stuffy circumstances. They're like,
we have a bubble around.
Oh my God,
us,
you're being so real. I like that.
No, actually that's the response I get. And usually it's like a room where I'm raising funds.
Yeah. And
somehow they love theater. Like, tell us your story. I was like, my back is breaking from telling my story. How about Jeff? You tell us your story. So, but anyway, is there a cost to that to you today? Leaving all of that different, aspects to yourself, and because I know, especially like, looking at your core message, I see why you've been able to do all that and work with some different complex people because you've lived it.
Yeah.
But is there a cost to that you on a personal level? Because also you talked about, you kind of made a joke about the trauma response, but what is the cost past that?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question because there's always a cost, right? And I will say the ability to be a chameleon, no matter the situation, and I would say even today, I could get a call right now. Hey, you have to go pitch a company you've never heard of.
Right.
In 5 minutes, you have no time to prepare and you have no notes. And I could do that and that would be great. I know I could do a good job with that.
Right.
The cost is never really truly knowing what rest or settling in your own self is like, because you're always just able to adapt. Whatever the situation, I can just kind of pop in and be there. Right. But I'm being a reflection of the situation. I'm not necessarily always figuring out who I am in the room. And I'm kind of in that phase right now of life of how do I show up as me, not just as what I know is right for the situation.
Right.
That's a different, there's value in that. And it's definitely been a successful coping mechanism. But I think the cost is then there's no consistency. There's no ability to truly be like rooted in a single place. Even literally if people say like, where are you from? I don't know how to answer that sometimes.
I hear you. I can relate to that as someone who also moved around.
Yeah.
It feels like we have similar stories, but I didn't like any of it.
Oh, no.
You are like, let me be creative here and figure out how to be creative in this aspect. I'm like, why? I'm losing 10 friends with every decisions that my parents made. But
I just didn't have any to start with, so it worked out.
I was a very interesting kid. I was a nerd. I was doing people's homework, so I guess they weren't friends, but they just were using me.
Yeah.
But I like to call them friends.
But you like doing homework, man, then you got something out of it too.
No, I definitely did. But there's some of them are still in my life
Yeah.
till today. I do want to pivot back to marketing a little bit, because I know there's a lot happening in marketing today. Just like being able to adapt. I feel like AI, people need to figure out how to adapt. And I want to know what's happening today in the world of marketing when it comes to AI. It's a very broad question.
Yeah.
But AI is broad.
I'm going to answer that with a mini soapbox. So I think I ranted about this recently on LinkedIn, to be honest. When we say AI, it's so easy for us to just think of it as this big amorphous blob.
Right.
It's like we're all talking about the same thing, right? AI. It's as if you could kind of consider that in the same way that maybe people might say, like, you would not even know how to answer that question if it was the internet was subbed out for AI.
Right.
It's like, what's going on in the world of the internet?
Yeah.
Wait, like, what does that even mean? And it's because I think the average person to the average business to governing principles are like 50 different things when it comes to AI.
Right.
And so if, we're just the average person, we might think of AI in the way we experience it most obviously.
Right.
Like the part we actually perceive or knowingly engage with is probably just a chat GPT. It's our LLM tool. Like that's what we think of when we say AI.
Right.
But really AI has been around forever. We have, and obviously not forever, but it is not a new thing. It's new in the way we knowingly experience it. And so I think that's where a lot of fear and a little bit of chaos in the market is coming out, because there's this like consumer realization that like AI is everywhere.
Right.
When in reality, it has been. I mean, the SaaS boom didn't happen this year. Like
Right.
that, machine learning's been a part of SaaS for so long. And so I want to be specific maybe with the question about like what's going on in the marketing industry with AI. The thing that's causing a lot of fear or backlash or just controversy is specifically AI tools that either automate or ideate for you. So those are two different things, right? You have things like Notebook LM that you could use as a tool to automate a research process. You dump in files, it gives you kind of a very specified, you can ask it questions and it provides answers based on your documents. That is automating a process that otherwise you would have to do manually. There are a million other examples of automation. Sometimes it's automating things that are someone's entire job. So there might be an AI tool that is, we use one that is creating every different size of a paid social ad that needs to be created, that someone historically has gone in and changed the file size for every single one of those. It's a manual process. You might argue nobody really likes that process, but people are currently being paid to do it. That is scary in that it feels like it's replacing a job. But there's a really interesting conversation happening right now in the marketing, I would say just in the tech industry at large, about what can and should be commoditized and what just can't be, which I think is very fun and exciting when you think about like, I would love for resizing to be commoditized. I don't want people to lose jobs. I do want them to get better at doing things that only they can do. I'm kind of okay with them not doing a tedious task that is not super valuable, doesn't really use a true skill set of theirs, but it does require people to be comfortable enough to ask like, okay, but what can I do that can't just be automated? What is it? My thinking? Is it my approach to this? Is it my strategic planning? Like, what is that? So that's on like the automation side. Is AI is changing a lot about the tools we use and how we make things more efficient. And then there's the ideation side of AI. And that I think is more tricky because you are asking for AI to provide ideas that maybe come from 5 different sources, 100 different sources. You never really know. It depends on the tool you're using. And that I think is scarier to some people in that it feels like, well, that is my value. That's the thing I don't want commoditized. That's the thing I really feel like I'm best at, or maybe there's a fear that people are going to rely on it so much that they become bad at it themselves,
Yeah.
And a really interesting topic on that front that I saw, I really am forgetting his name right now, so I need to go back and figure this out. But someone kind of had a petition to, instead of call AI artificial intelligence, to call it collective intelligence, which I love. And the reason is because if you think about ideating and you think about artificial ideas coming your way, that's not possible. It's learning from something. There are inputs that is being given. It's collecting those from humans, from brains, from people that are out there. Now, what you do with that idea and the collected ideas from other people could be good or bad. Ideally, you're editing, you're changing, you're doing something to mold it, but it starts to feel so much more human. And I think it would create so much less backlash if people thought of it as, I'm collecting intelligence from all these different sources and I'm adding it into my own to make it I'm adding to the voices, essentially. I think there would be a lot less fear about that and people might use it more appropriately too. But yeah, just the question of AI at large is hard when well, are we talking automation? Are we talking ideation? Are we talking just the background code of how something learns? It's totally different.
Earlier today, I saw this picture on LinkedIn, and he's been making a rounds because everybody else is using it because it's blowing up. But it's a picture of like a gym, and there's two different gym. One has a bunch of equipment, and there's one guy in there, and the other one, it looks like a CrossFit room filled with people, and the caption says, the people using AI and the people talking about AI. And I looked at that, I was like, oh, wow, that's actually powerful. And I'm going to put it here just so that people can see it. But another thing that I noticed when it comes to fear, as you talked about, which I see it all over the internet, is usually coming from the creative, side of marketing. Like creatives don't trust AI. They think their work is being stolen. So I don't know how that has been playing out in the marketing space today. And how are you guys communicating that when it comes to the creatives that you guys work with?
Well, I think I'll focus on the part that creatives are scared of, less about copyright. I'm not as well versed in that area, but what I do have really strong opinions on is using AI tools to generate. So like generative AI has been a huge topic with creatives, and there's all this, pushback. But it's so funny having done stints early in my career at letterpress shops, at screen printing studios. I think the same thing could be said for having myfonts.com, dafonts.com, what that feels like to early lettering artists, type designers, and even like typesetters. It's a similar situation where they were in a position where they could focus on these details, and it was a high demand, low supply. They were the specialists. And that has completely flip-flopped now. There is endless supply of fonts. Too many, right? Like Papyrus. Some that no one should ever use ever again. But designers today are not even realizing that their baseline tools have already gone through that transition, and they're starting, even creatives that have over the last, I would say 5 years, let's maybe say creatives are just starting their career now in design and photography, whatever it might be, Lightroom presets, like Photoshop, Canva. Canva's giving you all these templates. Usually you would have kind of a layout design part of your process that's being automated for you. So while it does feel scary because I think it has to do with expectation setting, you had an expectation that your skill set was in demand and was in low supply. And we're finding out it is in demand, but anyone can get it through these tools. Now, what do you do and how do you add value? And I think that the response is often, everyone should stop using it so that there's less supply, so that I am valuable. And going back to my major POV on just how to get to the human problem behind what feels like a work-related or business problem is, why do you feel like you're only valuable if you can do that thing a machine can automate?
Right.
Let's brainstorm. How can you be valuable in other ways? What were you maybe not even trained in that you could get trained in now to use those tools and to wield them? I do think early, it takes a significant part of your career to even feel like you've got those baseline tools down and that you're an expert using them. So if suddenly you feel like you have to fast track and now, the tools have done it for you, you feel like you're standing at maybe a blank canvas in front of you, like, well, now what do I do? So I do think that there's some misplaced frustration in the creative community about AI. I genuinely think we're missing a historical lens of how things have evolved and changed. I mean, even photography from illustration, like fashion illustrators used to be able to be the ones used in magazines and advertisements, and almost overnight it shifted to photography.
Right.
How did they make that transition? Let's, take a step back, be able to breathe, see how you can still expand your skill set instead of just essentially saying, I'm angry that these things have been created and everyone should value my gifts.
Right.
Like, what are other gifts? Let's
absolutely
expand it.
Yeah. I just like not long ago, I just got attacked by someone that I hired a long time ago. She was a marketer under my team. I just made a post of a video. It was AI generated. I had no idea. Somehow, because nowadays they say
it's really hard sometimes.
And then she just like reached out, was like, "This is not okay. As someone who is an artist, you shouldn't do." I was like, "Oof, how do I have this conversation with this person?"
Hard.
Yeah, and she, there was no way for me to talk to her. So I just said, "I'm sorry," and just moved on. So I don't know, you being a marketing leader, just a leader in the industry itself. How do you have these conversations to make sure that you can actually like connect with these individuals? Where I don't know if you've had a situation where someone comes to you and is turning into a conflict. How do you talk about it without it turning into crisis?
Yeah. I haven't had anyone come to me
for
yet,
you.
so
Wow.
I'm glad. But part of it is because I think, let me think how I want to word this. There's a difference in cultivating a craft, appreciating a craft, even supporting a craft. And by craft, I might mean design, videography, photography, illustration, things like that are seemingly commoditized by AI. You can appreciate the craft that goes into something, but then there's also the side of like, what is the point of the thing I'm putting out in the world?
Right.
And sometimes, you might argue that this feels slimy or gross, but like sometimes the point is to just get a message across quickly that no one will really come back to or linger with. And it's okay for it to have been generated quickly or, maybe not as much of the craft put into that. There's a difference in stealing work or it being, fully generative, because you do get into copywriting issues at that point. But there shouldn't inherently be a problem with putting a message out that just needs to be kind of a quick hit in the world, especially in marketing. Because you're learning from that, and there are only so many eyeballs that are going to see that thing. And, you're trying to, maybe there's a business goal of testing all these different assets or all these different images, messages, whatever it might be. And if you only do it the way that feels like it was pre-AI and using the craft, you're probably going to have some more difficult business outcomes. Might not get the ROI if it took X amount of investment to make the thing. And especially in today's day and age, you're not going to see it out in the world for very long. There are, unfortunately, there's a saturation of content. It doesn't live very long unless it goes viral, which is pretty rare when it comes to actual paid advertising, right?
Yeah.
But our team does not use any fully AI generated content in final creative.
Right.
So that is another thing, is like knowing when to use it. It's different if you're just resharing something out in the world, but if you're originating content for your business, you shouldn't need to use a Mid-Journey or a ChatGPT image generator. That could be your ideation,
right?
sketch mode, but ideally you would lead with something original.
Right. And the reason why I'm even asking you this question, because my background is in marketing. A lot of people know me back then, but I haven't been in marketing in probably 5 years.
Yeah.
Completely walked away from it. It was too much. And now I work in kind of like the workplace culture space. I meet so many, like leaders within the, Fortune 500s. They usually are coming to me for like culture. But then, I don't know, somehow I would find myself talking about marketing, and then they'll ask me questions, and I'm just like, oh, I've not been in the industry for a while, but this is what I can talk about. And I want to get your take today. Like, how do you go about communicating with these leaders that are excited about AI? It could be any form of marketing. I don't want to try it. They put a lot of money into it. It doesn't work. And they're like, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
And they move on, which also brings a lot of stigma to the industry as a whole. Because it's like, I feel like, people like me are trying to play both, industries. But I'm like, I need to find someone who actually can talk about this in a way that, they can meet the expectation first, and not make it all about the excitement aspect of marketing. It is very fun to talk about, but how would you talk to a leader about marketing today if they approach you?
Specifically with AI?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be specific about AI, but just marketing in general. I brought up AI because that's what they're talking about right now.
Yeah, yes. It is. It's interesting how many business leaders feel like they are realizing or learning in real time that marketing is a factor.
Right, I know, yes.
But when we're talking enterprise, I'll use that as an example. And there are extremely high goals. Everyone is saying we need to do more with less. So efficiency is king right now. And also the refrain everywhere, how do I show up in AI search results? Like that is a constant question, because that feels like the newest territory that they haven't covered. And they're like, we can't leave that unmanned, if you will. And so when I'm having those conversations, everyone has a tendency to jump into, what do we need to put in the market? How do we need to just move stuff, action, hit the ground running? And there's so many steps in between there that need to happen. There's messaging alignment, there's strategy, there's honestly just measurement planning. How are we going to attribute this? Hopefully you're going to attribute this. Like, let's all, have a plan for measurement. But that's just so often people are rushed into not feeling like they can put that time in. And I've been seeing it more, it's in correlation with the economy and consumer confidence, right? Economy and consumer confidence down here, rush is up here. Like they are inversely correlated. And so the tendency to just want to let's get stuff out the door. And we'll obviously achieve 5-to-1 ROAS, of course, if we just put it out, just ship it. And the problem is it's so saturated right now, and the platforms themselves are not trying to be efficient with your money. They're trying to use as much of your money as possible. So somebody has to come up with that plan. There has to be someone who's strategic enough to know how to prevent that wastage, to know how to be efficient but smart. And then when you do get in front of the right eyeballs, let's say that you have the most perfect channel strategy in the world, what are you going to say? And if you're just saying completely forgettable messaging, if you have something that has no differentiation in the market, doesn't even matter whether it was AI generated or whether you had a whole team doing it. If the strategy itself doesn't really matter, if you wouldn't click on it yourself, why are we spending money to launch it, right? So that's what I'm seeing a lot right now, is a need for rushing, a need for just getting something into market. We got to hurry. There's this event, there's this milestone, there's this executive team meeting, and then nobody's actually taking the time to figure out what's the best way to do that versus just make it happen.
Yeah, so that actually just reminded me of like a team that I was a part of. I used to live in LA. I've lived in a lot of places, which you can relate to. But I was working, I'm not going to say the name because I could get sued, but I was managing a budget around $600,000 a month. And it was a team of me and I think around 40 different, different, facets of marketing. And back then, my brain automatically goes into how can we cut down the, the cost immediately? Because back then, it's so hard to talk about the brand to not mention their products. But basically, we were selling pencils of superheroes on the pencil and backpacks. And I remember back then they would spend around, I think like $170 just to sell a single product.
Yeah.
And that was insane to me.
Insane.
And
Upside
then,
down.
Yeah, I was like, what is happening here? So as my job, I was focused on bringing down that cost to make sure that it makes sense. But then my, supervisor back then was not happy about that. So I'm not sure if you ever experienced this before in your industry, but his entire reasoning was that if we cut down costs, then we lose the budget.
Yeah.
And to me, that was so backwards.
Politics.
Yeah. But it's a massive global company. I don't know how they even hired me in the first place. I was actually dancing off the street with the Battery Tour years ago. And then I met one of the employees. One thing led to another. Oh yeah, I do this on the side, and I ended up getting hired to actually manage this massive amount of budget. But it was such an eye opener to me. And one of the reasons why I brought it up is to kind of ask you, how do you go about that when you find yourself working in a massive company where their goal is to just spend money because they know they have the money.
Yeah.
But you were programmed to cut the cost, to make sure the CPC is down. It doesn't make sense to me that companies are at that level where they're like, we don't care, just spend the money.
Yeah.
How do you have this conversation with those leaders?
All of our clients come in with extremely ambitious goals. So I will say that is a major deterrent to spending for no reason.
Right. So
I think because we have a reputation for getting results, that's why a lot of people come to us. So we're already starting from a standpoint of $1 in has to equal blank dollars out. So there's already an understanding there. And part of that is because we don't just exclusively play in the awareness game. So with brands who already have maybe household awareness and just simply need to maintain that, and they need to just be a part of maybe culture or share of voice.
Right.
It's pretty easy to just spend and not know exactly how that is coming back to the business. Whereas we really come in when there's an explicit goal. It's a certain amount of leads need to be generated a month, a certain amount of sales. There's a particular metric. So it's actually in our best interest to be super efficient because we can always use those other funds for test campaigns or, whatever that might be to learn more or to be, I would say, experimental. But it doesn't mean that we can't be efficient in those other areas. And it's part of the reason why, too, we don't work with every client out there. We're not a good fit if you are selling a small, low price point item because the ROI will not be there. We're going to put in a certain amount of effort and time. And if we're putting, all investment all in, if you're paying a couple $100 to get $12, a $12 product purchased, then you better be selling a hell of a lot of those products. And that's just not a fit for us. We are working with clients who their lead or their sale is, in the thousands, millions. And so it allows us to be efficient in the sense that we are either hyper targeting the right people so there's not a bunch of wastage, or we're saying you don't need to spend an epic amount of money. You just need to spend the right amount of money on the right channels. And then let's go run this experiment in a particular region or on a couple channels and really figure out whether or not it works. And that will afford and pay for our ability to scale. So I think it's a fact that we don't run into that very often is because it's just not our ideal client fit. If that makes sense.
No, so basically, it's not my fault. It's their fault.
Exactly.
That's what you're telling me. I mean, it was fun. I remember seeing that amount. I was like, how is this okay? In my head, I was like, I'm gonna go to jail. I'm gonna get fired. Someone's gonna be like, hey, this doesn't look like. And they're like, yeah, is that guy who was running the ads? Because that happens in corporate America.
Yeah,
all the
it really
time.
does.
I do have this question. How do you feel about just sales in general? Because I know you also do sales as well. And there has been this debate over the years of sales and marketing always like, who brings value? Is it sales or is it marketing?
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
So we actually do work a lot with internal sales teams. And so I will echo what I tell them and what I know to be true for my role is the role of marketing is to warm that conversation up and or fill the pipeline so that sales can bring it all the way into the door. And so they have to work in concert. And the biggest area of kind of disarray that I see is messaging. Right. There's so commonly the sales team has this particular way they like to sell, and they will talk about it in their one-on-one conversations, in their new business meetings, they've even like in their materials. Right. And that is just not anywhere near what's being put out in digital advertising, billboards, commercials. And it's like, why are these two different companies, right? When in reality, if you can align that and use sales input to help the marketing team, they're going to open the door for the sales team to close it. Right. So I've noticed historically, I think brands that are used to doing really big conceptual campaigns don't like working with the sales team because the sales team is really specific and they get really product focused. And so there's this disagreement on like, well, that's not fun. It's not compelling. It's not exciting. Well, I would argue you didn't make it fun or compelling or exciting. If there is a way to use that as inputs to then put that out in the world that still hooks people, excites people, like they are working together naturally. It's funny in my current role because I am doing both by myself. I'm not necessarily, not by myself, but because I am in both places, I'm not just thinking about them separately. Like I am putting things out on LinkedIn. We're running paid campaigns. We're going to these events. We're sponsoring things. So we're trying to get this presence out there. And my ultimate dream is that when I cold outreach, they've already heard of me. They're not just like, delete, random email, spam. Right. That is the ideal role of marketing. You're pulling people in a way that makes you feel human, you feel real, which is the only part of sales that I like. Right. The less relational stuff, I really could care less.
No, yeah, and I asked you that question because I talk to a lot of these leaders, and it's so funny because my background in marketing, they always try to pull me back, and usually they don't even understand the function of marketing. Yeah. And if anything happens, marketing's fault. It's marketing's fault. Let's go for marketing. Let's cut the budgets. Let's fire marketing, and also sales. And for example, I had a meeting with Black and Veatch, and oh my God, I just said their name. Hey, what's up? But I had a meeting with them, and then sales was in a completely different, building, and marketing was in a completely different building. So hopefully they can bring you guys in to help them.
We've done a workshop with them actually.
Good. No, like so they listen. Like, I went in there and I was roasting them because I asked like, I'm not gonna say his name, but like one of their leaders, and he's like, I have no idea who that is. I was like, you don't know your marketing leaders? I was like, what is happening here? I'm sure they looked at me, who is this kid yelling at us here? So I'm glad you guys are working with them. I did roast them a lot. So.
It's so common, unfortunately, especially in larger organizations. Yeah. We've actually started even attending things like a product marketing conference or like a more sales-oriented event conversation. And I think having that language is really helpful. Like I feel like I can speak with a product marketer and understand what they're trying to achieve, what their expectations are. And then I can also be frontline marketing and say, okay, love that idea. Nobody is going to tell you that your customer cares about that. Would be cool. Great for ego media. But like, it's not going to move the needle for you. So I think that's the difference is, Mad Men era advertising just needed to entertain and be this broadcast one-way message of like excitement, compelling. And honestly, sometimes it was a little bit manipulative of the facts. And you just hoped that by the time they got to the sale that they would overlook that or learn something new. Yeah. And now they're all so intertwined that like it's too immediate. You can't have a billboard that says one thing and then the immediate conversation following is like I feel like I got bait and switched.
No, like, to like the manipulative aspect, when I left marketing, and I remember when my supervisor asked me why I'm leaving, and in my head, I didn't say it as how, but in my head, I was thinking, I'm leaving because the creative minds of our generation, we're all trying to sell $9.99 products, and that's like a loss in purpose. Like we're all just like, what am I doing? I'm good at this, but I'm not getting any like fulfillment, in doing the actual work. And sometimes, and I know back then my identity was in what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then as I was getting older, things that were important before were not important anymore. So I was losing that connection. So I don't know if this is something that you've ever experienced as a marketer working in this space for like, I'm sure it's longer than 10 years, but as a professional in a business, growing that business together, with your partners and teams, have you ever had a moment where you are like, what the hell am I doing?
Every week. No, I do think it's a really relevant question because I've gone through periods, depending on my role at the time, or maybe even our client set at the time, the question of why am I spending my particular strengths and talents here?
Right.
Is there a better place to use these talents? And I'm thankful that especially Native is so focused on clients who are bringing something good to the world, that I never feel like what I'm pouring into is necessarily bad or pointless. I really don't think I could hack it at the agencies. That's not true. I could hack it. I would kill it. I would hate it.
Yeah.
If I was at any agency selling fried chicken or, yogurt, I just couldn't do it. I mean, now let's say it's like a high protein probiotic yogurt. I could get behind that. Wellness girlies. But I think that knowing that what I'm investing my time in is just a broader scale. It's not almost ever something that no one needs. Like all of our clients are actually giving people something that they need. It's usually just a really specific person. It's a niche product or technology. And so that helps. But it's hard sometimes to balance personal preference and like personal passions with what you're actually spending every working business hour on. And for me, I have a huge passion for the climate and clean tech industry at large. That's something I'm constantly researching on my own. That's when I'm given a chance to think about what I want to invest my time in or think about or support. It's going to be in that realm. But they don't always need, those brands don't always need what we have to sell. Sometimes they do, and it's great when we can work together. But there's just a natural mismatch there. And so I have to acknowledge kind of where personal preferences have to be kept in the personal hours versus feeling good that at least I know I'm not contributing to anything that feels wrong or pointless, meaningless.
No, unfortunately, I had all the meaningless like things that I was selling.
Yeah.
And then I think the older I get, it was just like, why am I doing? Like, I remember I'll have meetings and then I will like give so much and then I'll get so exhausted at the end of it. I'm just like, that was all bullshit.
It's so real.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, I just like spilled all this bullshit and they just bought it. And and then I'll feel bad about it. I was like, oh my God, this is so exhausting. But again, thank you for that, by the way. I do want to ask you something though. You've been in this industry for a very long time. And there's a lot of different generations that are coming into the space. It's something that I talk through on this podcast a lot. There's around, I think, 5 generations in the workplace today. And again, I was one of those young, cats coming into the industry. And is there anything that, like you can share as someone who's been in the space for a lot? My issue was that a lot of people coming into the space back then, including myself, we had no training coming in. We had to figure pretty much everything out from the beginning. So I don't know if there's anything specific that, as a marketer, that you can share to other marketers coming into the space today. That can just give them the tool to not lose themselves like I did, because I was completely gone. That's why I left the industry. Now I do podcasts about mental health.
I think there's a difference between having to figure out as much as you can by yourself, but in an organization of support
Right.
versus no support and having to figure everything out on your own with no fail safe or with no like guidance, support, things like that. Because one thing I notice a drastic difference between, let's say, the first year of a person's career when they come in expecting to roll their sleeves up and do whatever is that they're tasked with,
Right.
and to be eager about that, to be willing to go outside of a job description, to just simply explore or, chip in. There's a difference in how fast they grow between that first year and then somebody who is given an extremely specific and clear and ready to go set of instructions that they just simply execute on.
Right.
Like a year later, that growth difference is pretty wild. Now, their sanity might be better. They might feel more stable. They
Right.
might feel more, equipped. They might feel more confident. But I think we really have to then ask ourselves, is the problem that we're not training people? Or is the problem that we need people to understand how to be comfortable, how to feel less stressed, what to do with frustration, fear, etc., when they encounter situations they're not trained for?
Right.
That's where I would rather focus the time and effort, because inevitably you're going to be in a situation that you don't feel like you have the context for, that you don't feel like you've been trained up for that moment.
Right.
And if you are always going to crumble there, if that's always going to keep you up at night and overload you, then you haven't been given coping skills.
Right.
And I think that's a huge area for leaders to focus on, is how are we training resilience? Not just how are we training to get tasks done correctly,
Right.
but how are we training self-care? Like, when was the last time you asked your employees, how have you been sleeping? How are you spending your free time? Do you feel like you're balanced in life? Because you're not going to be able to tackle this very open-ended, nebulous project if you have no way of pouring into yourself for stability outside of work.
Right.
I can't be your stability. The mass layoffs will tell us there is no such thing as job security being your life security. That's just not how it works. So I think that the focus needs to be a little different.
Wow. Well, very well put. So it's a new year. A lot happened, and based on everything that's happening this year and what we've talked about today, I want to know, how are you doing and how is your spirit at this moment?
Great question. I'm in the midst of pretty massive personal life change. And going back to one of the things we talked about the cost of being able to be anywhere and everywhere and adapt all the time, And what I'm focused on right now is figuring out, like, who is Shelby and how can I just show up as myself no matter the situation, and still use my strengths of being able to come in and adapt and thrive.
Right.
But I'm really focused on, like, what does a stable, rooted self feel like? I'm not sure I've ever had that in my whole life.
Wow.
My whole life. Yeah. And so that's really what I'm focused on right now, which is both terrifying because it feels like, why am I just now asking, who am I? Right. But also really exciting. So there's this feeling of kind of trepidation, but also excitement. It's like, wow, I guess this could be the most exciting year of my life.
Well, I would make one suggestion: just get a journal, a beautiful journal.
Great idea.
It makes it more like personal. It's so fascinating when I sit down and start writing.
Yeah.
I don't realize how good of a writer I am until I actually sit down and start writing and just let my brain just do whatever it wants to do.
Yeah.
So a lot of beautiful things happen. So, but again, thank you so much for being here today and being honest and vulnerable with me and just share some, what's happening in your space. And I hope we can have you again. And, so again, thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was great.